Thinking is difficult, therefore let the herd pronounce judgment. Carl Jung wrote those words after spending decades being dismissed as an overthinker by the psychological establishment. While his colleagues preferred simple answers, Jung dove deeper. While they called him obsessive, he called it seeking truth. While they said he thought too much, he discovered that his relentless analysis wasn't a flaw. It was his greatest gift. Here's what Jung realized that changed everything. You're not overthinking. You're seeking clarity in a world that's built on shallow answers. The mind that everyone tells you to quiet down is actually trying to solve the deepest puzzles of your existence. The thoughts that keep you awake at night aren't your enemy. They're your unconscious mind demanding that you find meaning, purpose, and truth. If you've ever been told you think too much, analyze too deeply, or question too often, this isn't about learning to stop. This is about learning to channel that beautiful, relentless mind into the tool it was meant to be. Here's what's at stake. You're living in a world that profits from your mental silence. Society wants you to stop asking hard questions, stop analyzing deeper meanings, stop seeking truth beyond the surface. They want you to consume, comply, and stop thinking so damn much. But your overthinking isn't a mental disorder. It's a psychological rebellion. It's your mind rejecting the shallow explanations the world offers and demanding something deeper, something real, something meaningful. Right now, you might feel like you're drowning in your own thoughts. The constant analysis, the endless questioning, the inability to just let things go like everyone else seems to do. You've probably been told you're anxious, obsessive, or mentally exhausted because you can't shut your brain off. But what if I told you that this relentless thinking isn't a bug in your system, it's a feature? What if your mind's refusal to accept simple answers is actually a sign of psychological sophistication, not dysfunction? Jung discovered that the people who think the deepest often feel the most alone because they're operating on a level that most people can't access. You're not broken for wanting to understand the meaning behind your experiences. You're not sick for needing to analyze your relationships, your purpose, your existence. The cost of silencing that mind isn't peace, it's psychological death. When you stop seeking clarity, you stop growing. When you stop questioning, you stop evolving. When you let others convince you that your depth is a problem, you lose the very thing that makes you unique. But when you learn to work with your analytical nature instead of against it, something magnificent happens. That overthinking becomes insight. That analysis becomes wisdom. That relentless questioning becomes the path to authentic living. Let me tell you about the moment Carl Jung almost gave up on psychology forever. Not because he was wrong, but because he was thinking too deeply for the world around him. In the early 1900s, psychology was obsessed with simple explanations. Freud had his sexual theories. Behaviorists had their stimulus-response models. Everyone wanted neat, clean answers that could be packaged and sold to the masses. But Jung couldn't stop asking the questions that made everyone uncomfortable. What if human behavior is more complex than we think? What if the mind has layers we haven't even discovered? What if there's meaning and purpose beneath our consciousness that we're completely ignoring? His colleagues called him an overthinker. They said he was making psychology unnecessarily complicated. They accused him of being obsessive, of analyzing things that didn't need to be analyzed. Sound familiar? Jung later wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But first, he had to survive a world that wanted him to think less, question less, and analyze less. The turning point came when Jung realized that his overthinking was actually his mind seeking meaning in a meaningless profession. While other psychologists were content with surface-level explanations, Jung's unconscious was demanding deeper truth. He began to understand that his relentless analysis wasn't a personality flaw. It was his psyche's way of rejecting shallow answers and demanding authentic understanding. His overthinking was actually underthinking that had been disguised as mental illness by a society that preferred simple explanations. This is the first truth Jung discovered about overthinking. It's often a sign that your mind is too sophisticated for the environment you're in. Think about your own life. When do you overthink the most? Is it when you're in situations that don't align with your values? When you're in relationships that feel superficial? When you're pursuing goals that don't genuinely matter to you? Your overthinking might be your unconscious mind's way of telling you that something is wrong with your circumstances, not with your thinking. Jung realized that society has a vested interest in keeping people from thinking too deeply, because deep thinking leads to uncomfortable questions. Questions like, why am I living this way? What's the real purpose of my life? Am I being authentic or just performing what others expect? The psychological establishment wanted Jung to stop asking these questions because they threatened the status quo. They labeled his deep thinking as pathological because it was easier than admitting that their simple explanations were inadequate. But Jung refused to shut down his analytical mind. Instead, he began to study it. He started documenting his thoughts, analyzing his dreams, and exploring the deeper layers of his psyche. What he discovered revolutionized psychology. Jung found that his overthinking was actually his mind's attempt to process unconscious material that was trying to emerge into consciousness. The endless analysis wasn't random mental noise. It was his psyche trying to integrate new insights, resolve internal conflicts, and find deeper meaning. This is why telling someone to stop overthinking is like telling them to stop breathing. You're asking them to shut down the very process their mind uses to make sense of reality. Jung discovered that the solution to overthinking isn't to think less, it's to think more effectively. Instead of trying to silence the mind, he learned to channel its analytical power toward meaningful questions. This discovery led to Jung's first technique for transforming overthinking into insight, the practice of seeking meaning. Because Jung realized that most overthinking happens when the mind can't find purpose in what it's analyzing. When you give your analytical mind a meaningful problem to solve, it stops spinning in circles and starts moving toward clarity. Jung made a discovery that completely changed how we understand the human mind. People don't overthink when they have meaning. They overthink when meaning is missing. During his own period of intense psychological analysis, Jung noticed that his most torturous thinking spirals happened when he felt disconnected from purpose. When his life felt meaningful, when he was pursuing work that mattered, relationships that nourished him, or creative expression that felt authentic, his mind naturally focused and clarified. But when he was living according to other people's expectations, following paths that didn't align with his values, or pursuing goals that felt empty, his mind would spin endlessly, trying to force meaning into meaningless situations. This is Jung's revolutionary insight. Your overthinking isn't a malfunction. It's your psyche's way of telling you that something in your life lacks authentic meaning. Here's how Jung's meaning-seeking approach works. Phase 1. Identify your meaning vacuum. Start by paying attention to when your overthinking is most intense. Is it about your career, your relationships, your future, your identity? Your overthinking patterns will reveal exactly where your life is missing authentic meaning. Jung discovered that the mind only spins in circles when it's trying to solve problems that can't be solved within their current framework. If you're overthinking your job, it might be because you're trying to find fulfillment in work that's fundamentally unfulfilling. If you're overthinking your relationships, it might be because you're trying to force connection with people who can't meet your authentic needs. Phase 2. Distinguish between meaningful and meaningless problems. Not all problems deserve your analytical attention. Jung learned to categorize his thoughts into two types: meaningful analysis that serves growth, and meaningless spinning that serves nothing. Meaningful analysis asks, what is this experience trying to teach me? How can I grow from this? What does this reveal about what I truly need? Meaningless spinning asks, what if something bad happens? What do other people think of me? How can I control outcomes I can't control? When you catch yourself overthinking, ask, is this analysis serving my growth, or is it just mental masturbation? Phase 3. Actively seek meaning through action. Jung discovered that meaning can't be found through thinking alone. It has to be lived through authentic action. When you align your behavior with your genuine values, your mind naturally stops spinning and starts flowing. This might mean pursuing work that genuinely matters to you, even if it's less secure. It might mean ending relationships that feel performative and investing in connections that feel real. It might mean expressing yourself creatively, even if you're not good at it. The key is to move from thinking about meaning to living meaning. Let me give you a concrete example. Sarah was overthinking every aspect of her corporate job, every email, every meeting, every decision. She thought she had anxiety, but Jung's approach revealed something different. Sarah's overthinking disappeared the moment she started volunteering at a local animal shelter on weekends. Suddenly, her mind had a meaningful problem to solve: how to help these animals find homes. Her analytical nature, which had been spinning uselessly at work, now had purpose. This didn't solve her job situation immediately, but it revealed that her overthinking was actually her mind's way of saying, "This work has no meaning for you." Jung realized that modern society creates meaning vacuums and then medicates the psychological symptoms instead of addressing the root cause. We live in a culture that prioritizes productivity over purpose, achievement over authenticity, and success over significance. Your overthinking mind is rejecting this cultural programming. It's demanding that you live a life worth analyzing, pursue goals worth questioning, and build relationships worth understanding. But meaning-seeking is only the first step. Jung discovered that the overthinking mind also needs to be grounded in the body. During his most intense period of psychological exploration, Jung made a startling discovery. His overthinking was worst when he was completely disconnected from his body. The more he lived in his head, the more his thoughts spiraled out of control. But when he brought his attention back to physical sensations, his mind naturally clarified. Jung realized that overthinking often happens because we've abandoned our bodies and retreated entirely into mental analysis. But the mind wasn't designed to operate in isolation. It needs the wisdom of the body to function properly. This is Jung's second technique for transforming overthinking: embodiment practice. Here's how Jung's embodiment approach works. Step 1. Recognize the physical signature of overthinking. Jung learned to identify the physical sensations that accompanied his mental spirals: tight shoulders, shallow breathing, clenched jaw, restless energy. He realized that overthinking always has a physical component, and that physical component holds the key to breaking the cycle. Start paying attention to what happens in your body when you overthink. Do you feel tension in your chest, tightness in your stomach, restlessness in your limbs? Your body is giving you information that your mind is missing. Step 2. Use physical sensation as an anchor. When Jung noticed his mind spinning, he would immediately bring his attention to his physical sensations, not to judge them or change them, but simply to notice them. This act of embodied awareness interrupted the thought spiral and brought him back to the present moment. Try this. Next time you catch yourself overthinking, place one hand on your chest and one on your stomach. Feel your breathing. Notice the temperature of your skin. Feel your feet on the ground. This isn't about relaxation. It's about integration. Step 3. Let the body inform the mind. Jung discovered that his body often had information his mind was missing. When he was overthinking a decision, his body would already know the answer. Tension meant no. Expansion meant yes. Restlessness meant this isn't right for you. Your body processes information differently than your mind. While your mind analyzes possibilities and potential outcomes, your body responds to what's actually happening right now. When you integrate both sources of information, your decisions become clearer and your thinking becomes more focused. Step 4. Move the energy. Jung realized that overthinking often creates stuck energy in the body. The mental spinning generates physical tension that then feeds back into more mental spinning. Breaking this cycle requires physical movement. This doesn't mean you need to become an athlete. It means you need to move the energy that overthinking creates. Walk while you think. Write by hand instead of typing. Stretch when you feel mental tension. Dance when you feel stuck. Let me share how this worked for one of Jung's patients. Marcus was overthinking his relationship to the point of insomnia. Every night, his mind would analyze every conversation, every gesture, every possible future scenario. Jung had Marcus pay attention to what happened in his body when he thought about his girlfriend. Marcus noticed that his chest felt tight and his breathing became shallow. His body was telling him something his mind was trying to ignore. When Marcus finally listened to his body's wisdom, he realized that his overthinking wasn't trying to solve relationship problems. It was trying to alert him to the fact that this relationship fundamentally didn't feel right to him. The overthinking stopped the moment Marcus honored what his body had been trying to tell him all along. Jung understood that in our modern world, we've been taught to ignore physical wisdom in favor of mental analysis. But the most sophisticated thinking happens when mind and body work together. Your overthinking might be happening because you're trying to solve problems with only half of your intelligence. When you bring your body's wisdom into the equation, your mental analysis becomes more accurate and more efficient. But embodiment is just one piece of Jung's approach. His most powerful technique involves accessing the wisdom of your unconscious mind through dream analysis. Carl Jung made a discovery that revolutionized how we understand overthinking. The thoughts that keep you awake at night are often trying to deliver messages your conscious mind isn't ready to hear. And the clearest way to receive these messages is through your dreams. Jung realized that overthinking often happens when there's a conflict between your conscious desires and your unconscious wisdom. Your mind spins because it's trying to force solutions that your deeper self knows won't work. But your dreams bypass this mental resistance and show you what your unconscious mind actually knows about your situation. During his own period of intense psychological exploration, Jung began documenting every dream, no matter how strange or seemingly meaningless. What he discovered changed everything. His dreams were providing solutions to the exact problems he was overthinking during the day. When he was mentally spinning about his career direction, he dreamed of underground rivers that led to hidden chambers. When he was analyzing his relationships, he dreamed of mirrors that showed him parts of himself he'd never seen. When he was questioning his purpose, he dreamed of ancient symbols that pointed him toward his authentic path. Jung realized that dreams are the unconscious mind's way of presenting solutions to problems the conscious mind is overthinking. Here's how Jung's dream analysis approach works. Stage 1. Document everything. Start keeping a dream journal beside your bed. Write down every dream you remember, no matter how fragmentary or bizarre. Don't analyze them immediately. Just record them. Jung discovered that dream wisdom often emerges through patterns over time, not through individual dream interpretation. You're looking for recurring themes, symbols, and emotions that appear across multiple dreams. Stage 2. Identify overthinking themes. Look for connections between what you're overthinking during the day and what appears in your dreams at night. If you're spinning about a relationship, pay attention to how relationships appear in your dreams. If you're analyzing career decisions, notice how work or purpose shows up in your dream world. Jung found that the unconscious often provides clear guidance about problems the conscious mind is struggling to solve. Stage 3. Decode personal symbols. Dreams speak in symbols, not logic. Jung learned that each person has their own symbolic language that the unconscious uses to communicate. Water might represent emotions. Houses might represent the self. Animals might represent instincts. The key is to understand what these symbols mean to you personally, not what they mean in a dream dictionary. Jung realized that universal symbols exist, but personal associations are more important. Stage 4. Apply dream wisdom. Once you understand what your dreams are telling you, Jung emphasized the importance of acting on that wisdom. Dreams aren't just interesting mental phenomena. They're practical guidance from the part of you that sees beyond your conscious limitations. Let me share a powerful example. Jennifer was overthinking a job offer for months. Her mind went in circles analyzing pros and cons, salary comparisons, and future implications. She couldn't make a decision. Then she started tracking her dreams. 3 nights in a row, she dreamed about being trapped in small spaces, elevators, closets, boxes. In each dream, she felt claustrophobic and desperate to escape. Jennifer realized her unconscious was telling her something her conscious mind was trying to ignore. This job offer, despite looking good on paper, would leave her feeling trapped and constrained. The moment she understood this message, her overthinking stopped. Her dreams had provided the clarity her analytical mind couldn't access. Jung discovered that overthinking often happens when we're trying to make decisions based solely on conscious reasoning while ignoring unconscious wisdom. Dreams provide a direct line to insights that conscious analysis can't reach. Your dreams are showing you solutions to the exact problems you're overthinking, but you have to learn to speak their symbolic language. The beautiful thing about dream analysis is that it transforms overthinking from a mental problem into a spiritual practice. Instead of seeing your busy mind as something to fix, you start seeing it as something to dialogue with. But dreams are just one way to access unconscious wisdom. Jung's final technique involves externalizing your internal chaos through the practice of active journaling. Jung made a revolutionary discovery about overthinking that changed his entire approach to psychology. The thoughts spinning in your head aren't meant to stay there. They're meant to be externalized, examined, and transformed through the act of conscious writing. During his darkest psychological period, Jung found himself drowning in mental chaos. His thoughts spiraled endlessly without resolution. That's when he began what he called active imagination, a process of dialoguing with his thoughts on paper instead of just thinking them. Jung realized that overthinking happens when thoughts remain trapped in the closed loop of your mind. But when you externalize those thoughts through writing, something magical happens. They transform from chaotic mental noise into organized psychological material. This is Jung's final technique for transforming overthinking: conscious journaling. Here's how Jung's journaling approach works. Method 1. Stream of consciousness dumping. Set a timer for 20 minutes and write continuously without stopping, editing, or censoring. Let every thought in your head flow onto the page, no matter how repetitive, ridiculous, or uncomfortable. Jung discovered that this process serves 2 functions. It empties the mental chaos onto paper, where you can see it objectively, and it allows unconscious thoughts to emerge that your analytical mind has been suppressing. Don't try to make sense of what you're writing while you're writing it. Just dump everything out of your head and onto the page. Method 2. Dialogue with your thoughts. Jung developed a technique where he would write conversations between different parts of his psyche. He would write out his worries, then respond to them from the perspective of his wiser self. Try this. Write out your overthinking thoughts, then respond to them as if you were advising your best friend. Often, the wisdom you'd offer someone else is exactly what your own mind needs to hear. Method 3. Pattern recognition. After a week of daily journaling, read back through your entries and look for patterns. What themes keep appearing? What questions keep arising? What fears keep repeating? Jung found that overthinking often revolves around a small number of core issues that manifest in many different forms. When you identify these core patterns, you can address the root instead of chasing symptoms. Method 4. Solution dialogue. When you've identified a pattern, write a dialogue between the part of you that's worried and the part of you that might have solutions. Jung discovered that we often have access to wisdom we're not consciously aware of. Ask questions like, what would I do if I trusted myself completely? What would I choose if I knew I couldn't fail? What would love do in this situation? Let me share how this transformed David's relationship with overthinking. David spent months analyzing whether to leave his corporate job to start his own business. His mind went in endless circles, weighing risks, possibilities, and potential outcomes. Then David started Jung's journaling practice. After 2 weeks of stream of consciousness writing, a clear pattern emerged. Every entry contained some variation of, I know what I want to do, but I'm scared of what others will think. David realized his overthinking wasn't actually about business analysis. It was about his fear of disappointing people who had invested in his corporate success. Once he identified this core fear, he could address it directly instead of disguising it as rational analysis. Within a month, David had made his decision and started his business. The overthinking stopped because he was no longer avoiding the real issue. Jung understood that journaling transforms overthinking from a mental prison into a psychological laboratory. Instead of thoughts spinning uselessly in your head, they become raw material for conscious growth and authentic decision-making. The key is to approach journaling not as a way to solve problems, but as a way to understand what problems your mind is really trying to solve. When you externalize your thoughts through writing, you create space between yourself and your thinking. You stop being your thoughts and start being the observer of your thoughts. And from that observational position, clarity naturally emerges. After decades of working with his own analytical mind and helping thousands of others transform their overthinking, Jung discovered something profound. The goal isn't to stop thinking deeply. The goal is to think with purpose, clarity, and wisdom. Jung realized that overthinkers are often the most psychologically sophisticated people in any room. They see complexity where others see simplicity. They ask questions others don't think to ask. They feel deeply where others feel superficially. The problem isn't that you think too much. The problem is that you've been taught to see your analytical nature as a flaw instead of recognizing it as a gift that needs to be properly channeled. Jung's integration process works like this. Phase 1. Acceptance of your analytical nature. Stop trying to become someone who doesn't think deeply. Jung learned that fighting your natural mental processes creates more psychological suffering than working with them. Your mind is analytical because it's supposed to be analytical. Your job isn't to shut it down. It's to give it meaningful problems to solve. Phase 2. Systematic application. Use Jung's 4 techniques systematically, not randomly. When you feel mental spinning, start with embodiment. Bring your attention to physical sensations to ground yourself in the present moment. When you feel unclear about direction, apply meaning-seeking. Ask whether you're trying to find purpose in something that's fundamentally meaningless to you. When you feel stuck on a problem, use dream analysis. Pay attention to what your unconscious mind is trying to tell you through symbolic guidance. When you feel overwhelmed by thoughts, practice journaling. Externalize the mental chaos so you can examine it objectively. Phase 3. Purpose-driven analysis. Jung discovered that analytical minds need big, meaningful problems to solve. When you give your mind trivial issues to work on, it creates trivial solutions. When you give it profound questions, it creates profound insights. Instead of analyzing what people think of your social media posts, analyze how you can contribute something meaningful to the world. Instead of overthinking whether you said the right thing in a conversation, think deeply about how you can build more authentic relationships. Phase 4. Community with other deep thinkers. Jung realized that overthinkers often feel isolated because they're surrounded by people who operate on more superficial levels. Find your tribe, people who appreciate depth, complexity, and meaningful analysis. You need relationships with people who don't tell you to just stop thinking about it when you're processing something important. Let me share how this integration transformed Lisa's relationship with her analytical mind. Lisa had spent years feeling ashamed of her tendency to analyze everything deeply. Friends called her exhausting. Family members told her to lighten up. But when Lisa applied Jung's approach, she realized her analytical nature was actually her greatest strength. She started using her deep thinking abilities to solve meaningful problems in her work as a social justice advocate. Instead of analyzing social interactions endlessly, she channeled that analytical power into understanding systemic inequality. Instead of overthinking her personal relationships, she applied that mental energy to building more effective advocacy strategies. Lisa's overthinking transformed into powerful insight that now serves thousands of people. Her mind didn't become less analytical, it became more purposefully analytical. This is Jung's ultimate insight about overthinking. It's not a mental disorder that needs to be cured. It's a cognitive gift that needs to be properly directed. Your analytical mind is capable of profound insights, creative solutions, and deep understanding, but only when it's working on problems worthy of its sophistication. The world needs people who think deeply, question thoroughly, and analyze meaningfully. Don't let anyone convince you that your depth is a problem. Learn to use it as the tool it was meant to be. Here's the truth that Carl Jung discovered, and that can transform your relationship with your own mind. You're not overthinking, you're underliving. Your analytical mind isn't broken, it's bored. It's starving for meaning, purpose, and problems worthy of its sophistication. When you give it meaningful work to do, when you ground it in your body's wisdom, when you listen to your dreams, and when you externalize its insights through conscious writing, something magical happens. That overthinking transforms into the very thing it was always meant to be, a pathway to clarity, wisdom, and authentic living. Your analytical nature stops being a burden and becomes your greatest gift. Your assignment is simple but profound. Choose one of Jung's 4 techniques and apply it for the next week. If you're feeling mentally scattered, start with embodiment practice. If you're lacking direction, begin seeking meaning. If you're feeling stuck, pay attention to your dreams. If you're feeling overwhelmed, start journaling. Remember, Jung spent decades proving that the minds that think the deepest often understand the most. Your analytical nature isn't a flaw to be fixed, it's a gift to be channeled. You're not overthinking. You're seeking clarity in a world built on shallow answers, and that makes you exactly who the world needs you to be. Write in the comments, "I choose clarity." Let's build a community of deep thinkers who understand that our analytical minds are not problems to be solved, but gifts to be honored. If you're ready to explore more of Jung's revolutionary insights into the mind, check out my video on Carl Jung's shadow, the dark truth about your hidden self, where I reveal how the very traits you criticize in others are actually showing you what you need to integrate within yourself. See you in the next dimension.